Dear friends, we are taking up for discussion today a theme which is a matter of lot of discussion, and everybody who wants not just this spiritual illumined life, but even at the social level, a peaceful, cooperative, and friendly life, peaceful life, they also have this worrying difficulty at the individual level, at the level of family, at all different stratas of our social living. We face this very practical question. That this is, of course, we understand that the ideal of non-violence, the ideal of peaceful coexistence, an ideal of not resistance to evil, all these ideas we certainly appreciate. And we know how valuable they are, not only for spiritual illumination, but for a peaceful neighborhood, say, a peaceful family, peaceful neighborhood, a peaceful world in general. How these ideas are helpful to usher in that. But uh, we wish that we would have lived in that kind of world. The problem is, I want to lead a peaceful life, no doubt. I do not really want to hurt anybody, but I am living in the midst of so many people who are out there just to hurt me. They have nothing else seems to do. They want to hurt me, they want to hurt the society, they want to hurt my family and my community. When I am living in the midst of such people, then what should I do? How can I practice the idea of non-violence there? It is true that we all have this problem, that there are people that we encounter now and then, more often than we wish, that they are out there to hurt us. Look at that, we see that they are plotting against us, even if we have nothing against them per se, but they never stop plotting against us. And if they get a chance, they are going to surely attack me and eliminate me and do everything possible against me. And when I am seeing this, what should I be doing? It is all right that the scriptures say this. In fact, we do find it in scriptures of every religion that do not be violent, be peaceful, imbibe these ideals. Uh, if you see Upanishads, it is replete with these ideas which are more elaborated in Bhagavad Gita, what is called ahimsa, non-injury, principle of non-injury, non-violence. It is told in at least 3 chapters of Bhagavad Gita very explicitly that this is a value that each spiritual aspirant must inculcate so that we will be able to lead a life that is surely taking us ahead to our true spiritual ideal. If you see for example, Bible too, there is a lot of mention of non-violence. When it comes to Old Testament, of course, there is this idea of serve thy neighbor as thyself, which Jesus quotes again in the New Testament. And then there are the special ideals which are proclaimed by Jesus that, well, you have heard that eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I tell unto you that if somebody gives a slap on one cheek, turn the other cheek also. If somebody takes away your coat, give him the cloak also. If somebody makes you walk 1 mile, go with that person 2 miles. Great ideals. He says that you have heard that love your friends and hate your enemies. But I tell unto you, love your enemies. This was a great advancement that Jesus has given there, that step out of this kind of what is sometimes called as golden rule, friends and enemies. I will deal with friends as in the friendly manner, but when it comes to enemies, I will go out to kill them. Well, that is, of course, a common instinctive practice that a person does. So even scriptures do not need to tell us. If somebody gives me a blow, instinctively my hands will rise to give. If that person has given one, I will not stop till I give 4, 5 at least, and see that the fellow is eliminated, dead, and so forth. And it is because my enemy, I will see my enemy in the graves. I will not let them live. After all, they are my enemies. It is this idea, as we see, is going to make the world certainly full of constant wars, and there won't be any peace at the individual level either. It is, therefore, Jesus says, no, love your enemy. And it really is very shocking, even for people living in contemporary society, understanding these ideas better than the tribal culture. There also we feel, well, how can this be practiced? That love thy enemy. It is a great advancement, and it is learning actually. To love the enemy doesn't come naturally. It is to be practiced, it is to be learned. And when shall we go to learn it? When we know that it is beneficial to us. When we know that it is useful to us. What do we go to learn? Something that is useful to us. And we see that I want to learn because it is going to be of so much use. Why should I pay such huge sum to schools to learn something that is of no use? So it is something that is useful that I want to learn. And if I want to learn to love enemies, I will learn it only if it is going to be helpful to me, useful to me. And certainly it is useful, friends. All sages have spoken of that when you want to achieve the ultimate goal of the oneness of existence, then certainly you have to go beyond I and you. And the first step is that conflict, I and my enemy, has to be conquered through this positive practice of loving thy enemy. Jesus further goes in that if you love only those who love you, then what better are you than those tax collectors? And they also love. I was traveling in one airliner, and as we were landing, the customary announcements were being made that, well, we are landing at the Providence Airport, and yes, thank you for coming with us. We love you. And then the attendant said in a kind of, hush, actually your money. It is. We love you, but actually your money, that is what we love. She wanted to be a bit honest about it. We love you, but actually we love your money. Who doesn't love in that sense? Everybody will love you, if you are going to give me $100, let alone 100, say 50, let alone 50, maybe 10, or even 5, or whatever, I will love you because I get something from you. There the love is a matter of, it comes automatically because we feel the benefit of it. Learning is needed when I see somebody is robbing me. Then I have to learn to love that person. So Jesus says, what better are you doing than those tax collectors? They love you because you pay taxes. So the tax collectors are going to love you. So it is not really love. When you have to develop love, then the test is, are you able to love your enemies? In discussing the spiritual virtues necessary, that there are qualities told, like in primers of Vedanta, that you have to practice forbearance. And forbearance has been defined in the celebrated book Viveka Chudamani, the crest jewel of discernment by Shankaracharya, as tolerating, bearing without murmur, without complaint, all the sufferings that come our way. So, no retorting, no trying to, resist them. That is a great spiritual virtue, titiksha. It is called titiksha in Sanskrit, forbearance. So when we read all this, certainly we understand that they are so important. Without trying to imbibe them, actually it is not possible practically to progress in spiritual life even a little bit. And we can see this, that that kind of, meditation will not succeed. Our meditation, when the mind is filled with anger about somebody, will go to the meditation of that person. That what bad he did to me. So it is, instead of taking the name of God, we will be uttering that person's name unconsciously all the time. That is, we see the anger, how big an enemy it is for our spiritual life. If we are violent to somebody, again our mind will not be able to think of God. It is a psychological truth that our meditations will not succeed if the mind is not freed from that anger, hatred, and the idea of enmity towards people. So, certainly we get pain and pleasure in the world, and whatever I think is responsible for giving me pleasure, I become friend to that person. Whatever I think is bringing pain to me, then I see that, well, that person is my enemy, and I should resist the enemy. I should fight with the enemy. Even before giving the enemy a chance, I should go and do a preemptive attack. That is, preemptive attack to eliminate that person and whosoever might be associated with that person, so that I will be able to live in peace. Soon that dream vanishes. There is no peace to be obtained in this manner. It is as it is said very wisely, and we all know that saying that if tooth for tooth and eye for eye is practiced, then the whole world soon will become blind and toothless. That is the automatic outcome. A tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye. Well, you can easily see, you don't need a prophet to tell this. This is going to happen if we practice this ideology. So, therefore, we see certainly that for spiritual life, we need basically to practice these virtues. Without practicing these, reading hundreds of scriptures and doing hours and hours of meditation is not going to be of any practical use. It is just like pressing the gas pedal without putting the car in the gear. So it will make just noise, big noise. Put the car in parking or in neutral, and then keep on pressing the gas pedal. The car won't move. So exactly like that, unless we learn to practice this cardinal virtue, which Bhagavad Gita mentions as the first in the virtues to be acquired by spiritual aspirants. Bhagavad Gita in 16 chapters, 16th chapter, verse number 2, tells the divine money, the divine money, the money of virtue and money of vice. It says that Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat, the demonical wealth and the virtuous wealth. And it says that with this wealth of virtue, you can get liberated. Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya Nibandhaya Asuri Mata. That and the other, the demonical, will go more to bind you down to this diabolical existence. So if we want to get liberated, yes, we have to practice this non-violence. And while practicing this, even before we start practicing this, the question comes, but that person that I have to live with or deal with, or is in the same neighborhood, or we work at the same place, many times this question has been raised by people who have complained against those with, people who are their bosses or co-workers and such. And they tell me that, Swami, you don't understand the practical life. In the real life, all this non-violence and such things do not work. It is what can be said. If you want to get liberated, if you want to follow the path of spirituality, you have to get it. The problems may be there, but you have to find how to overcome those problems. But there is no possibility of getting it. Telling many difficulties actually doesn't solve the problem. As one of our doctors used to tell, to the villagers in that mobile dispensary that we used to go out, the patients would tell many complaints that why they are not able to take the medicine. That, oh, I forgot, or some such things. I don't know where I kept it, and so forth. The doctor would say, well, unless you take the medicine, uh, you are not going to get cured. Don't tell me the reason why you didn't take it. That is not going to be of any help. You may say a demon broke into my house and took it away. I don't want to hear the excuses. The fact is the fact that unless you take the medicine, you are not going to get cured. Similarly, unless we imbibe this principle of non-violence in us, no spiritual progress. This medicine has to be taken to cure the disease of worldliness. And so, this problem that how should our attitude be when other people attack us? How should we, because we have to protect ourselves, is it not? We have to protect ourselves. And this story told by Sri Ramakrishna throws great light on this idea that how should we deal with people when we have to protect ourselves against all these evil-minded in the world. Here, of course, we conveniently take for granted that I am not evil. Others, those people, always those people, I am so good, don't you see? I am so good. It is, if you disagree, you are, I don't care. It is, I am good. But there are other evil people who are out there to hurt me. How should I deal with that? If I am practicing non-violence, as Swami Vivekananda commented about Jesus, that advice, that if somebody gives you a slap on one cheek, turn the other also to get another slap. So he says, if even a few 100,000 of the world decide to practice this, the world will be in such chaos. And still, he mentions there, still we understand that how important this principle is. So what is to be done? That there Sri Ramakrishna tells this story, that look, let me tell you a story. The world teachers like that, they teach in stories. Like Jesus and Buddha, they also taught in parables. So Sri Ramakrishna tells a parable that there was a venomous snake in a village, and everybody in the village was scared of that snake. Anybody on the path, it would just rush and attack that person, bite that person. So people used to be very scared of that snake, wouldn't go on the path where that snake used to live. Things were like that when one mendicant brahmachari brahmachari means who practices celibacy and is tuned to God, life tuned to God. So as he came to that village and was about to pass along that path, and the villagers told him, don't go by that path. Listen to our advice. There is a venomous snake there. And it just pounces on people, attacks and bites them. And it is so poisonous, you will die instantaneously. And this brahmachari said, well, let us see, I have no enmity towards anybody. If the snake wants to bite me, may the snake bite, what is there? And as he was walking on that path, seeing this person, this snake, with a lot of aggression, came and attacked. But because of the spiritual power, the snake could not really bite him. And then the brahmachari said to him, why do you bite people? It is not good. He gave him spiritual advice. He gave that snake spiritual advice. And the snake became the disciple of him, agreed that yes, the goal of life is to realize the God as indweller in everybody, and I have to give up enmity to all. Got it. He told the brahmachari, understood, I will not bite anybody anymore. And then time passed, quite a long time elapsed, and this brahmachari had again to walk on the same path. And when he was walking, the snake again comes out to salute its guru, to take the dust of the guru's feet. And so as it came out, the brahmachari saw that it is hardly able to walk. Its body, whole body, is badly injured, bleeding, a lot of scratches, and was not eating, it seems, emaciated body. So he asked this disciple snake, now the snake is his disciple, asked the snake, oh, what happened? Why, what made this kind of situation? It is, and then the snake narrated the story, rather horrifying, that, I started practicing what you had told. I did not go to bite anybody. And as I was just going around, first everybody used to run away seeing me. But soon they found that I am not chasing anybody, I am not biting anybody. I have become rather very peaceful. So the little kids in the village, they started throwing stones at me. They even beat me with sticks. And I could have bit them, but since you had told not to bite anybody, so I kept just my cool. I ran away, and so that is the condition that I have. Your advice has reduced me to. This is, and then the brahmachari said, "Oh fool! I told you not to bite. I didn't tell you not to hiss. You hiss so that you will protect yourself. They will not come to you. But don't bite. Don't bite. What is this hissing but not biting? This is an important principle. Hissing means that you protect yourself, keep away the dangers, but do not harbor ill will towards anybody. Do not harbor the thought that somebody is my enemy. Just protect yourself. It is, we have to protect ourselves. There is, this itself is also a discipline of non-violence. If we do not protect ourselves, then we are basically causing our own death. Means violence again, is it not? It is again violence, we killing ourselves. So that should not happen either. We should therefore protect ourselves against all aggressions. But we must bear this in mind that we should not harbor enmity towards a single person. Because actually they are all united with me in spirit. We are one there. And if I harbor enmity towards any person, then it is going to be hurting me as well. We have to practice this principle because hurting somebody is going to hurt me also because we are one. Also, there is this law of karma that it is going to come back to me as a hurtful experience. If I am hurting somebody, then certainly I am developing that karma and it is going to come back to me. So, we, even from that understanding, we should not hurt anyone. And from, of course, the spiritual point of view, we must remember that self here and self in another body, they are not different. We have to march towards that important spiritual experience that although we see and acknowledge the distinctions between bodies, my body here and body there, different a body of human being and body of a tiger are different. Yeah, bodies are different. Minds also are different. But the self in all is not different. It is the same self in all. This is the truth. And this truth actually uh, goes to bring everything that we are actually seeking in life. That is why realization of this truth is the goal. And if we are seeking happiness in life, everybody seeks it. Uh, I don't know anybody who says, no, I don't want happiness, I want pain. No, we all seek happiness, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. We all seek love, uh, we all seek peace. These and these are all there in this experience of oneself. And it is there alone. Nowhere else can you get these. Let us remember this, that without realizing this oneness of the spirit, oneness of the self, we will not have happiness, peace in life. Superficially, for a day or so, we will feel peaceful. Oh, yes, today there were no problems at work, and my spouse also didn't quarrel with me today. And actually, the food I got was good, and there was sunshine, the temperatures were good. So, I feel a day long peace. Then again, next day, things become different. It is that is the nature of the world. We will not have constant peace. We will not have constant happiness also. So, to have the real ultimate peace, which will not depend on how somebody else behaves with me. Because I want to be peaceful, and to keep me peaceful is not the responsibility of the world. Whose is that responsibility, Teresa? My responsibility to make me peaceful, not somebody else's responsibility. So, therefore, if I want to be peaceful, that peace should not depend on the situations. That if I hit a lottery, maybe I will be peaceful. No, no, don't think that you will. But it is the peace doesn't shouldn't depend on the whether it is sunshine or rains or snow, whatever. In or whether uh, you had a quarrel with somebody today or somebody said bad things about you. That should not be the source of your disturbance or peace. Your peace should be intrinsic. I am peaceful. No matter how the world reacts, it is like sugar is sweet. Mm. You don't have to add something to the sugar to make it sweet. Sugar, if you add sugar to something, it becomes sweet. But sugar in itself is sweet. So, my peace should be like that. I am peace. Nothing can make me lose it. So, also about happiness. The source of happiness, source of love is this oneness. There is no getting away from this fact. And when we look at this, that it is one self everywhere, then if I have the intention of hurting somebody, then I am hurting myself. That is why when we see oneself, we don't go to hurt. One saint, I like that example a lot, that when we, because of some problem in the mouth or because of hurry, if our teeth bite our tongue, what do we do? Do we go and break those teeth? You bit me? No, because the same, my teeth and my tongue, you don't then hurt it. You do not become angry. You only say, I should have been more careful while biting, that's all. You do not get angry. So, when a person comes to that illuminated state where that person sees the oneself in all, then there is no possibility of enmity. Ishavasya Upanishad wonderfully states that it is yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhud vijanatah sarvabhuteshu cha atmanam tato na vijugupsate. Sarvabhuteshu cha atmanam. In all beings, you see this myself. I am in this as well as I am in that. I am in everything. I am. Now, how can that person be inimical to anybody? How can that person go to hurt anybody? Not possible. And yet, we have to defend ourselves while acquiring this. It is, and the practice for that is, if the situation is such that you are going to get hurt physically or mentally, just protect yourself. Hiss. Keep the attacker away. But in heart, know that nobody is your enemy in the world. This is to be learned, friends, that yes, I will hiss, but I will not bite anybody. I will not think that somebody is bad or evil. It is very important. Because what is bad if I am getting pain? It is, I should not get angry at somebody whom I think is responsible to bring pain at me. No, not just as you don't hold the mailman responsible for bringing a big bill to you. Mm. The mailman has not much to do. You ordered something or you did something for which the bill is. And so I got the other day a big bill in mail, and then I didn't call the post office for that. I called the person, who had sent the bill. Hey, why, this is rather too much, don't you think so? And so forth. So it is like that. We get what we deserve because of our karma. Whatever we do, and then it is sent through somebody. That person becomes just the what? Mailman, the messenger. So do not get angry with that person, but see that you protect yourself. It is important for us, therefore, to haste, but not to bite. Many times this second part is forgotten, that it is hiss is told by Sri Ramakrishna. I was actually hissing, but I couldn't just stop myself from biting. It is that shouldn't happen. Not bite is an important part of it. We will hiss, but will not bite. Thank you, friends. Any questions? Yes, Charlie?
I think I asked you this once before, but I don't remember the answer. Arjuna goes on to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. How is that hissing but not biting?
Very important question, and I thought somebody would ask this question today because I quoted from Bhagavad Gita. And many, even many scholarly persons, especially in the Western world, ask this question, that Bhagavad Gita is such an important, rather the most important Hindu scripture, and I don't get it. It speaks of non-violence and such spiritual qualities and very sublime idea of oneness of existence. But look, what is happening there in practice? This Arjuna was trying to become non-violent, wanting to get away from the war, and this God, whom he takes as his teacher, that teacher, that Krishna, incites him, induces him, in fact, rather seems to be forcing this peaceful man into war and into killing so many thousands and thousands of people. So, how does it work? Don't you think it rather contradictory? Well, it is actually a very good example of hissing but not biting. It is here that we have to see that Arjuna, who was one of those brothers whose kingdom was being taken by deceit or whatever by the other cousins. And then there was a treaty, an understanding then that okay, your deceit or our stupidity, whatever it may be, we lost it and we should get it back after performing that, for 12 years we will be in exile, and for 1 year we will live incognito. So, if you find us during that 1 year, the same thing will have to be repeated. And so the other cousins, they were quite sure that they will get the kingdom forever, because where can they hide? We will find them out after all. So, but they hid themselves so well that they could not find. Then when they came out, they demanded the kingdom. that is this. And they refused to give the kingdom. Then there was a lot of, uh, discussion, dialogue, negotiation, that Krishna said, okay, I understand you don't want to give. Give half. You take half, let these brothers get half. Said, no. Okay, these are just 5 brothers. Why don't you give 5 little villages so that one for each of these brothers? And this king cousin declared that let alone 5 villages, I will not give even the land that can stand on the end of the needle, on the tip of the needle. I will not give that too without fighting. And so that is how the war came there. It is a very good example of hissing, not biting. That Arjuna was trying to run away from this war, not out of any idea of compassion or non-violence, but because of attachments. That is why, although he was saying that I want to get away from the war, if you read what Arjuna was saying, he was confused, and that is why he was seeking advice from Krishna. If he was so convinced that I am not going to fight, he shouldn't have fought. After all, Krishna was his friend. He was, at that point, he didn't take Krishna as his teacher. Later, he takes Krishna as his teacher, but not initially. Also, if he was so convinced of this idea that this fighting is not right and I am not going to fight, he shouldn't have fought. Why should he? So, because he knew that there is something wrong, I am not thinking right, and so he asked this question to Krishna. Therefore, if you see Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises Arjuna, Yudhyasva, fight, Vigata Jvaraha. That word is to be understood too. Yudhyasva, fight, Vigata Jvaraha, means without those inimical emotions. So this is very important, Vigata Jvara, that morbid enthusiasm like a fever. Jvara is sometimes can be translated as fever. Don't fight with that kind of war fever, but fight to protect yourself. Yes. Yeah, that is to, you are right there, that teaching is given to Arjuna to bring home the truth that after all, the self is immortal, and you are not the killer and they are not being killed either. It is, so that is to tell Arjuna that don't get attached to these names and forms. So exactly, that is, yeah, that is correct. Although that is not exactly the context that we are discussing this in, that the question that he asked had that, well, if war is violence, and why Arjuna was getting into that. So, but what you said is correct. Thank you. Oh, well, what is it, Heidi? A very good question. While Jesus spoke about, not resistance, and it's a very good question. Why Jesus turned the tables against tax collectors? Yeah. the tax collectors, he did not turn the tables against them as such, against the extortion that they were engaged in. It is the tax, everybody is paying tax, but he didn't say that the tax collecting is bad. He was giving the example that, well, a tax collector will love somebody because that person is giving tax, so he is getting his commission, his job, and so forth. So that love is not really the love. So Jesus actually in Jerusalem, in the temple there, he threw out all the shopkeepers there because they were in the name of religion, were just doing shopkeeping, and so to keep the sanctity of the place, he took them out there that you do business, but don't do it here because the place has a sanctity of itself, so it should not be done there. So he didn't become inimical to anybody. He was friendly to everyone, not inimical to anybody. Yes? Oh, okay. Huh? No question. Okay. So, okay. Ask quickly. Ah, well, it is in the war. If he doesn't kill, they are going to kill. That is that they are there. The fighters of the other side, they are there to kill you. So, in self-protection, he has to kill. The war was not declared by Pandavas, War was declared by the cousins. Their general, Bhishma was their general. If you read the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the first conch, the first declaration of war comes from him. So, they are there to kill. Bhishma himself announced that as long as he is alive, he will kill at least 10,000. Imagine, he was such a great warrior that he will kill at least 10,000 of these Pandava army every day. And he did that. So, the protection means this, that you have to take the warriors from the other side out. So it is not biting, it is still hissing. If you run away, okay, we are not going to chase you and kill you. But if you are coming to kill me and are not stopping at anything, then to protect myself, I am killing you. That is just hissing and not biting. If that army was running away, Arjuna was not chasing them to kill them. So this is the difference. Yes, good question, yeah. When this is where a spiritual aspirant reaches the ultimate goal, where the duality completely vanishes, then there is no question arises, no question can arise about whether to hiss or to bite. Whether hissing also is I am hissing to myself, biting also I am biting to myself. There is no question that can be asked about it. The instructions are for whom? For those who already have attained knowledge, they don't need instructions. Those who do not want to attain knowledge, they also don't need instructions. It is only those who want to attain knowledge and have not attained knowledge, they need these instructions. So it is given to them. But it is true that this whole dialogue becomes meaningless when one realizes the truth, because there is no other to bite or other to hiss, correct?